to be talking about the article Enhancing Adolescents' Comprehension of Text by Building Vocabulary Knowledge. So, it is known that students can learn about 2,000 to 3,000 words per year. But with that being said, many times they know how to spell them, but they do not know what they mean. And it is shown that students' vocabulary affects their reading comprehension. So if they don't understand the vocabulary word that they learned and know how to spell, then it's going to hurt them when they start to read these words in a book or a passage. To have a better understanding of vocabulary, teachers can show explicit vocabulary instruction and learning strategies for these words. And so today we're going to be talking about teacher-directed vocabulary instruction, text-based vocabulary instruction, and morphology-based vocabulary instruction. So the first way that we're going to enhance comprehension by building vocabulary is teacher-directed vocabulary instruction. And basically, just in a nutshell, that is going over new vocabulary in detail with your students. So there are multiple elements that need to be included for introducing new vocabulary. And so one of these ways is the student should have plenty of opportunities to practice new vocabulary. So you don't need to just write the vocabulary word on the board and then put the definition, have them say it, and then write it down and just move on. They're not going to learn it that way. And so you need to come up with fun and new ways to make them engaged. And you also need to have a good and purposeful meaning to what you're doing, because if you're not, they're not going to be interested and they're not going to want to do it because they're going to be like, why am I doing this? So it needs to be fun and interesting. And also, they need to be excited about what they're doing. So that's another thing that you need to remember. But don't just be doing the same old boring thing, because if you're going to do something's boring, they're obviously going to be bored. Also, it should involve higher level thinking questions. So when you're going over the new vocabulary words, you need to have some good questions that they can automatically think of when they're taking those state tests or the ACT, because they're going to have that. And if they're not introduced to that with new vocabulary, they're not going to know what to do when they are reading on a state test and are like, what am I doing? So you need to put confidence in that and just help them along with that. Also, I will say, the ways that people put in textbooks for teachers to introduce new vocabulary to students is not the way that should normally be done. So most of the time you're going to have to come up with outside the box ways to introduce new vocabulary to them. Also, explicit vocabulary instruction should be done orally. You can't just, like I said earlier, write it on the board, do the definition, and then have them write it down and move on, because they're not going to remember that. And so to keep that going, you're going to have to engage the students, and you're going to have to put yourself engaging with them so that they can remember it more. So if that's putting them in groups or doing something like that and having a fun activity where they can remember it that way, is a great way to incorporate that. Also, everything that you do for new vocabulary needs to be modeled. So if you're expecting them to do something, you need to do it first so they know the expectations that they need to meet. And you need to also make sure that there is content that is around the word and put that in there as well, because it can help them relate to other words. Be like, okay, well, this is related to this, so this might mean around the same thing. And also, the last thing for teacher-directed vocabulary instruction is you need to be encouraging to your students while they work on this, because sometimes this is very difficult for them, and if you're not encouraging or you're not trying to help them out, they're not going to do well. And so you need to be persistent and be okay with not moving along with the pace of what it may be, because you want them to know what their vocabulary words are. And so you need to keep doing it until they master it. Okay, so the next one that we're going to talk about is text-based vocabulary instruction. And so basically what that is using content in the text to figure out the word that you do not know. And so this is more of a student-based instruction, so it's more on the discipline of their part rather than the teacher. and it forces them to be more independent in their reading. And so one way that you can incorporate this would be to do wide reading. This is a strategy where it allows time for students to read on their own in a level book that they are on. So not everyone has to have the same level book. So it's basically like enjoyment reading, but it's for a goal to learn new vocabulary and to figure it out on their own. And so this is really good for struggling readers because they can catch up with the rest of the class with this way. And you can work with them on the side if you need to. And it also doesn't hurt the students who are very advanced in reading because they can read on their reading level and find new words that they don't understand and figure out what to do. And also another strategy that can be used is context clues or reading around the word. It's kind of the same thing. So the students look for clues in the text around the word that they don't know to figure out the meaning. And this is really good for them to expand the words that they don't know on their own, because it's not something they just come up and ask the teacher and be like, what is this word? Because at first they're going to be like, okay, well, what do I know that can help me understand this word? Okay, so the last one that we're going to talk about today is morphology-based vocabulary instruction. And basically what that is learning parts that make up a word. So there might be more of a complex vocabulary word where it can be broken down into parts or what it's derived from. And it's very important for students to know the meanings of these parts of the word so that when they are trying to read it on their own, they can figure it out very easily. And it's important to learn these parts of words so they can put it together. And it should be taught consistently over a long period of time because there's constantly words that these students are not going to know. So helping them break it down will be a really good thing to do. And when you teach it, you need to do it with a comprehension strategy, just so when they're applying it to when they're reading, they know what to do, instead of being like, okay, well, I know what this word means on its own, but when I read it in this sentence, what can that mean as well? And that's where context clues can come in, but also where they can break it up and be like, okay, well, I know that by means two, so it must mean two things instead of just one. So just things like that can help your students when they're reading on their own. And also it helps them form a more complete vocabulary because they're not saying a bunch of words when they could just say one that encompasses all of those together. Okay, so to wrap up what we've been talking about today, it is very important for children to understand vocabulary and build upon that to help them with their reading comprehension. And doing that by teacher-directed vocabulary instruction or text-based vocabulary instruction or morphology-based vocabulary instruction is extremely important, because all of these things and more will help them in the future, will help them to become better readers and to have an overall well-rounded vocabulary. And that is our job as a teacher, is to help them improve in that. So whether that give them the tools directly or through strategies or just helping them by giving them time independently is a big benefit for them.